All right, it's going to be a quick live stream. These are live streams, but they're also going up permanently on my YouTube channel. And this one is coming from a tweet that I did yesterday. I quote tweeted something about Meghan and Harry, and I'm going to pull it up, show you what I'm talking about, and then tell you why I'm doing this live stream. So here is the tweet. This is from someone, Rebecca Carroll. It got a lot of engagement. It was about that documentary about Meghan and Harry. And so she says, white people should be watching Meghan and Harry because Harry is showing up the way white people need to show up as they learn. Okay. Um, I did not watch this documentary. I probably will not. But I guess the idea is that, Harry is an ally and Harry is supporting Meghan as she's going through all this racism. Okay. All right. So I was looking through the replies, and a lot of them were saying that this is a racist comment. And there you see at the bottom, this user, Elizabeth Jane, I circled her comment and put the question mark. Because for me, I actually don't know why this is considered racism. And I asked that question, I got some replies. And so I said, okay, this is one of these examples where you've got a complex social phenomena and people are picking and choosing what measurements or how they want to define that term and then how they want to talk about it, right? And this happens a lot. This isn't new. I mean, I've been communicating about all of these hot button issues now for several years, and it always happens. Like something like whiteness, for example. Well, what is that, right? And then people are, talking back and forth about it, or what would be something else? Gender fluidity. I might use that example later. Gender fluidity, and well, what does that mean? What are you talking about? And so eventually someone will come to the point where they say, look, define your terms. And that seems to be like the enlightened way of having the conversation, because once you can define your terms, then you're talking about the same thing. And that's good as far as it goes, right? um But I think, and this is the point of this live stream, that we actually don't have to ask people to define their terms. Instead, we need to ask them what it is, or how do you know when you see it? And so I'm going to build up to that, right? The idea here is, okay, defining your terms is cool, but you need to ask a different question, and it is, you know, how do you know it when you see it? That's that's where I'm going to go with this. So first, I need to talk a little bit about the uniqueness of social phenomena. So you've got hard sciences and you've got soft sciences. And they're not called that because one is more difficult than the other, although people may think that. You call hard sciences, chemistry, biology, physics, you call them that because the phenomena that they are trying to understand and explain are relatively precise. Everyone knows what you are talking about when you bring up a concept in chemistry, or more or less know, or biology or physics, right? There's precise measurements of whatever it is, temperature, chemical balance, molecules, what have you. It doesn't matter, right? Speed, mass, these types of things. So that's what makes a hard science a hard science. Soft sciences, however, are called that not because they're easy, but because the phenomena that they are trying to explain are pretty vague, right? And there are many different ways of measuring those phenomena, and so in that way, it's more soft, right? That's the idea. So I'm in soft sciences, and I teach a course called Research Methods on occasion, and so we have to deal with this problem. We have to deal with it. Take for example capitalism, right? I did say I'll do gender fluidity, but I'll go with capitalism. So take, for example, capitalism. What is capitalism? Like, can you measure it? How do you know it? Like, what is it that is capitalism? Now, you can take an entire book and talk about what capitalism is, because it's a composite of so many different things, and people may not even agree on a precise thing within the composite. It's that complex. I mean, just so for example, we could look at the individual level and we can say, all right, one, capitalism is the exchange of goods between people. Uh, you could say at the individual level and say capitalism is also the beliefs that people have about entrepreneurship and free exchange, something like that. You can look at the institutional level and you can say, well, capitalism is about financial institutions and how they work in a society. You can go even broader to a macro level and say, well, capitalism is about the total goods, GNP, GDP. Capitalism is about the laws that govern a society and whether or not they allow entrepreneurship and, okay, production and consumption, free production, free consumption. All that's capitalism. So if you're trying to understand capitalism in a society, compare between two societies and whatnot, it's very difficult, because that idea of capitalism can be understood in so many different ways. Thus, you know, economics tries to be like a hard science, but to me, if you're trying to understand capitalism in its broadest terms, it's a lot of different measures, and I think that's why economics could also be considered a soft science. You could do it with psychology. I mean, what is anxiety? What is trauma? How do you measure those things? I mean, it's just crazy, right? There's so many different ways of looking at it. So that's the uniqueness of social phenomena. Okay, well, we have to deal with this problem. So I'm still not talking about Prince Harry and what is racism and all that stuff. I'll get to that in a minute. But first, I have to kind of build up the idea and build up the understanding. Okay, so how do we deal with this problem? Let me share my screen again, and I'm going to show you an image from a textbook that I use. All right, so this is the chapter is about qualitative and quantitative measurement, and this particular section is more about quantitative measurement. And what you see here is some steps, right? Where you're moving from, let me use my draw function here. You're moving from an abstract concept that I could call an idea. My handwriting sucks, but I'm trying to use a mouse. You're going from an idea to here, which is the definition of that idea. And I'll explain what's going on in a minute. To finally, what it looks like in the real world, right? And I'll say real world. I'll put that there. Okay. There you go. Go ahead and try and spell it out, Roderick, with that mouse. There you go. Okay. So let's go back to, no, I want to do gender fluidity here. Let me tell a little story here about gender fluidity using these three processes, right? So let's say, you got someone sitting down, two people sitting down in the bar, and one person says, you know what? You know what's interesting, Joe? Right? Say Sam's talking to Joe, two good guys having a beer. You know what's interesting, Joe? It seems to me that I got an idea now, Joe. It seems to me that we're talking about men and women, but Clarence over here, I mean, he's a man's man, right? Like when I think about a man's man, I think of Clarence. Clarence, he drinks his whiskey straight. I know these are stereotypes, by the way, but that's actually the point of gender, is sort of linking what's expected in a society to a certain biological sex. So I know these are stereotypes. Clarence is, he's drinking his whiskey straight. Clarence smokes cigars after a hard day's working, sweating. Clarence has his open carry license, and he carries his gun on his hip or something like that. That's a man's man. But you know what? You know what though? Who are our characters? Oh, that's right. Joe is talking to Sam. Okay, so Joe continues this, and he says, "But you know what, Sam? There's also Timmy. Timmy's a dude, but Timmy ain't like that. Timmy, he likes to, you know, stay at home. He likes to cook a little bit. He likes to watch sports, but I don't really see him as that kind of man's man, right? It's kind of weird, right? They're both men, but it seems as if there's a scale here, and I can do the same thing with women, right? Um, what is being narrated here is the idea of gender fluidity, that there is a scale of masculine and feminine, and people can move about on that scale. You can choose. You can say, you know what? Um, so since I just did guys, I'll try and do girls here. A girl could be a tomboy in her early age. She likes to play sports. She's doing all the things that are stereotypically associated with being male. So she's a tomboy, and maybe she models herself after her father or something. But then all of a sudden she changes. She decides, you know what? I want to present myself as more feminine. So I'm gonna ditch the jeans, and I'm gonna start wearing more skirts. I don't know, it's being stereotypes, but that's the idea. So you can write a whole book about that idea of gender fluidity. And often when I'm on social media and I'm talking to folks, I'm stuck at the idea stage. And so I'll say, well, this is, we are, so people are gender fluid. And when I say that word, I have all of these ideas sort of piled into that term, gender fluidity. And so I might think that a person knows what I'm talking about, maybe not. Another person thinks gender fluidity is something else, and so we might have some disagreement about it. And so eventually, someone may say, well, define gender fluidity, right? And so that's that second stage. That's that second stage. That's the conceptual definition stage. And this refers to taking the idea and giving it a precise definition. Okay. So then the person, he's got those ideas in his head, and he says, okay, all this means gender fluidity, but I need to summarize this in some rather more or less precise way. And so he gives a definition of gender fluidity. Now, the thing about these definitions, and one of the reasons why I'm doing this live stream here, is because, well, because that idea is so broad of gender fluidity, you can give any number of definitions, and you'll see that too. You'll see that in social science. You will see many definitions for the same general idea. So, just off the top of my head, I could say that gender fluidity is being able to move, or the fact that a human can be more masculine or feminine, or there's a scale from masculinity to femininity that is disconnected from a person's sex, and that masculinity and femininity is produced through society and culture and changes over time, something like that. Okay, now that's fine. I mean, that's fine, as good as it goes, and that would certainly help people when they're talking with one another. But there's another level that we rarely get to when we're having conversations, and that is the level of indicator or measure, right? So the process of conceptualization, what I just talked about, is taking that idea and giving it a definition. All right. So the process of operationalization, it's a lot to say, is moving from that definition to a specific activity or measure. Basically, how do you know it when you see it? And that's where we need to be in conversations. All right, so let me get that out of here. I actually like that chart there, or that figure. I use it all the time in my classes. So we need to move from idea to concept to measure. And I think in conversations, right, what we need to do is just say, okay, you're saying something is racist, right? What do you mean by that? How do you know racism when you see it? That actually forces people. All right, so what you need to do is ask people that. How do you know it when you see it? And I think that's important because if we're going to talk about these issues, we need to be as precise as we can. And oftentimes there's there's a sense that people are just making up as they go along, or that people are sort of weaponizing words and all this stuff. And we can kind of bypass a lot of that by asking the right questions. So there's some advantages of asking people, how do you know it when you see it? One is that it forces us to think with more clarity and precision. So going back, let me see if I can bounce around here. I'm gonna go back to that tweet and share it here. So this is the tweet. Um, and this person says that it's racist. Okay. So me and this person may or may not share the same idea of what racism is. I think in a broad sense we do. We all know that racism has something to do with race, right? That's the start. Racial categories, that's the start. Um, and then maybe after that, you write that book on racism, you'll eventually get to the point where you say that, using racial categories leads to some bad outcome. I mean, we've got some value judgments and with racism, so we might, this me and this commenter, this user here, we might share a broad idea of what racism is, possibly. Sometimes you disagree on that, but possibly. Okay, if I asked her to define her terms, fine. I mean, she'll define it in some way, which I think is what people did in the replies, but I don't want to show them. I don't know what her definition of racism would be, but mine would be, um, racism is using racial categories to exclude people or oppress people, right? Or treat them differently, right? So you've got the category, and then you got this action of mistreating people in some way. Okay, I think that she and I diverge on that. So if we would ask the question, so if I would ask her to define what she means by racism, she would tell me something that's different than that. And that's a good start. But then the best thing to do is to ask me or another person, okay, fine, that's your definition. But even the definition is just ideas, right? So we may agree, we come to a greater consensus, maybe not. But how do you see that in the real world, or what phenomena in the real world lets you know that this is an instance of racism, right? For me, it would be some form of, here's a person who I can see is looking at another person and treating them badly through words, maybe through some sort of physical thing, a hate crime or something like that. That is how I would know that that's a racist, right? Or someone using the idea. It doesn't have to always be a visual activity. It could be you talk to a person and this person says, okay, I mean, in the simplest sense, I think that Hispanic people are lazy or something like that. Okay, well, when that person verbally expresses that, I can hear that, and that's something I can measure. And that would be an instance of racism for me. And so if this person asks me to define my terms, I am forced to be that precise. And I think it helps with conversations. I really do. So I think that's about good enough. I think that's very helpful. There's some other reasons though. I mean, it stops cheaters, right? So some people, they know that a word has a lot of um, moral overtones. Uh, they think you're a bad person if you if you are this, right? It's a slander, it's a stigma, right? So well, we just talked about racism. Racism, if you call someone a racist, that's a bad thing. And so people know that and they can weaponize that word. So if you can get that person to say, okay, you're calling this person a racist, what in the real world represents racism to you? Then they are forced to point out something specific about that person. And then you can agree or disagree on whether or not you agree that that actual activity is racist or not. But that actually helps with cheating, right? So I mean, that's just another advantage. Avoids confusion, right? So there are many ways that this is good, but that's kind of what I wanted to get at with this quick live stream, is that we're always asking people to define their terms, and that's cool. But I think the best thing to do, right, is to ask, okay, you're talking about X idea. How do you know it when you see it?